All right, well, welcome everybody, and thank you very much for being here today. We're super excited to have this conversation with you all. One, because I think this topic is inherently just super interesting to me, but also a lot of our world is rapidly starting to change on us, both as B2B marketers, but also just everyday regular people, right? And I know the title of this might give sort of an ominous or like bleak connotation, right? The dark funnel. Who? I think the opposite is actually true. That the changes we're enduring right now, by and large, are very positive things. But with that positive change requires some proactivity on our part. So I would love to plant in your brain right now, slide number 1, the need to start having proactive conversations with your clients, not just about what you're seeing changing in the landscape, but also how that could impact performance, how you measure things, or even what your goals should be for certain campaigns moving forward. Some quick introductions here. My name is Andrew. I'm the Senior Director of Media Strategy here at Luxid US. Our department is basically involved in all things ad and communications placement and measurement. But I've been in the digital marketing world for a little over 17 years now. And over that time, I have seen a lot of trends, a lot of changes come and go. I will say, though, again, the changes we're experiencing today are by and large unprecedented and super exciting. Chiara?
Yes, and my name is Chiara. Nice to meet you. And I'm also working in Luxid, but in the Finland office. And I work as a digital marketing manager. So basically, I take care of the digital marketing campaigns for our clients from the briefing until the final report. And I relate to what Andrew just said, that I've been now working in digital marketing for 5 years, and I feel like it's changing so quickly, so drastically that it's very important to keep up with the trends. And I'm very excited about today's topic and present it to you because I think this is now number one hot topic from in our clients, what they ask from us as external agency.
Absolutely. So a quick agenda here, what we'll be discussing today. We're going to start with defining what the dark funnel is and why it matters. From there, number 2, we'll go over how we can infer its impacts, even though we can't necessarily see it directly. Next, after that, number 3, we'll discuss the evolving digital landscape and how traditional metrics are changing on us rapidly. From there, number 4, we'll go over some unfortunate costs, if you will, of fighting those trend changes. Before we conclude number 5 here with how you can start working with your clients today to rethink their goals and introduce new proxies. So again, that's sort of that proactive element that will be threading a lot of this conversation together. But before we get into any and all that, we want to start by taking what you might call a bit of a hard right turn here. Because first, I want to talk about astrophysics. Yeah, so full transparency, if you've ever worked with me in the past, you know I tend to nerd out on this subject quite a bit. I promise you, it's not just me being weird for weird's sake. It's a little about me being weird for weird's sake, but I do have a point that I will get to. I promise you that. In general, I find this topic just inspiring. You know, it helps me open my mind, helps me think about abstract things. So if you'll politely indulge me for a minute, how about we get weird together? And I'll start with this here, this chart from NASA, and many groups around the world have basically found the exact same thing. So there is scientific consensus on this, that 95% of the entire universe is invisible to us. Literally 95% of everything we know to exist is completely invisible, leaving only the tiniest sliver of this pie chart here, 5%, as visible. That's that chunk called ordinary matter. Don't let the term trip you up. It's actually simple to define. Anything that interacts with light, so your eye, a telescope, or a microscope, any of that stuff that makes up the world around us is ordinary matter. So your coffee cup or the desk that it's sitting on, your computer, your body, clouds in the sky, stars at night, all that stuff is just ordinary matter, and it only makes up 5% of the universe. The rest of it, completely invisible. And that's why it's called dark matter and dark energy, not because it's evil. It just literally can't see it, not directly anyway. But we know that it exists because we can infer its impacts on the stuff that we can see. And that's a super important distinction in science. Differentiating between what we can see directly and what we can infer exists helps scientists ask and answer very deep questions about how the universe works. For example, how are galaxies built? This stunning photograph here, taken from the James Webb Telescope, is of our neighboring galaxy Andromeda. It's a spiral galaxy just like our home here in the Milky Way, only this one is much, much bigger. In fact, if you were to draw a dotted line from the top left corner of it, moving diagonally down to the bottom right corner, that distance represents 220,000 light years of space. In other words, it would literally take a particle of light, the fastest known moving thing in the universe, 220,000 years to make that journey. That's important because if you calculate everything you can see in our telescopes there, all the stars, the gas clouds, the nebulas, etc., there's not nearly enough matter, or more accurately, enough gravity accounted for to keep that 220,000 light year object held together. For all intents and purposes, it should just unravel and spin endlessly off into space, but it doesn't because there's some invisible glue accounted for there holding its shape. In fact, 85% of that object is believed to be what scientists call dark matter. And again, it's not dark because it's ominous or evil. It's just literally something we can't see, but we can infer its impact because of how huge and beautiful and colorful this shape actually is. Here's another mind-boggler for you. Why are things drifting apart? Another photograph taken from the James Webb, this one called Deep Field, only now we're looking much farther, both in space and in time, all the way to the edges of the universe itself. Every light you see in this photograph are other galaxies just like Andromeda and our home here in the Milky Way. But what scientists are learning about this is that all of these objects are moving farther and farther apart from each other and from us in all directions and at an accelerating rate. It literally means the universe itself is expanding and at an increasing rate over time. So much so that some of these objects, they're moving so far, so fast from us that their light will never be able to catch up with us again. They're literally going to disappear on us for eternity. And there's no visible force that can do that. Scientists don't really know what it is. They just know that it is happening. And that force, they call it dark energy, and it's believed to make up about 70% of the known universe. So quick recap, dark matter, that's sort of that invisible glue holding big objects together. Simultaneously, dark energy, that's that invisible force pushing things out. All right, enough of that weirdness. I promised you I had a point, and here it is. B2B has a similar challenge in advertising. Most of what holds a brand together, let's call that B2B dark matter, and drives its growth, let's call that B2B dark energy, is completely invisible to us. Enter the dark funnel. Ta-da! Promised you I had a point there. But enough conceptualizing that in terms of astrophysics. Why don't we look at this in actual terms of measurement and campaign performance? To start here, we'll look at what's called the light funnel, right? Sort of the opposite. And all you performance marketers out there, if your jam is driving leads or e-commerce revenue or pipeline growth, whatever it might be, you've no doubt seen a similar funnel to this in the past. And it's called the light funnel because it's a very neat contained system that's fully attributable. In other words, what happens within it captures a lot of data that we can measure from a customer's potential journey from point A to B to C to D, et cetera, et cetera. Let's contextualize that for a second. Let's say you are an online shoe retailer and somebody goes to Google because they need a new pair of shoes and clicks on your ad. Boom. Instantaneously, we're gathering data about that user's journey that's fully illuminated. If they're browsing multiple pages on your website, maybe they download a brochure, they watch a video, etc., you're capturing even more information about them that is fully attributable to that first point of click. Let's say they go even farther than that. They make a purchase or they submit a form to become in your CRM or something like that. Now you might even have direct revenue or pipeline opportunity assigned to that first point of click. Clients love this kind of stuff, right? Because just like us, a lot of them are trying to find their own opportunities to grow within their organizations. They might be trying to find a promo or something like that themselves. And campaigns like this provide that return on investment story, that ROI. It's very clean, it's very neat, and it's very attributable. The dilemma becomes, though, there's a lot happening that's not captured in this system. Using that same analogy of an online shoe retailer, I asked the question, what prompted a user to go to Google in the first place, right? What gave them that need or that intrinsic desire for a new pair of shoes? That's where the dark funnel kind of becomes conceptualized here a little bit. There's a lot that's happening in human psychology that makes us want things or need things. And the kind of campaigns that tend to provoke that activity, like general brand awareness campaigns or word of mouth or brand loyalty, you'll never be able to fully attribute that kind of variable to a point of purchase. In other words, there's no clicks necessarily required in that. I'm not capturing the same kind of data I can with, say, a Google Ads campaign or a LinkedIn campaign directly. There will always be this periphery that exists there that we can also fuel to help the performance campaigns do even better. The dilemma becomes, though, oftentimes in our world, clients only feel safe financing the light half of that funnel and not the dark half. And in reality, you do need both. And I get it. Performance campaigns are really important. They're very capable of showing some powerful performance outcomes. But there's a lot going on that can help a brand grow that's not being accounted for in those strategies sometimes. The awareness campaigns, the loyalty campaigns, the stuff that is a harder time telling that ROI story. Clients tend to be afraid of those. They see them as too expensive or no real return. That's not true. There are some ways that we can get around that. We'll introduce those proxies in a little bit. All right, so we talked about the importance of what we can see versus what we can infer. The same is true in B2B. And we know that we can infer the existence of this dark funnel because of a couple core B2B classic principles. Perhaps you've heard these, perhaps you haven't. Regardless, they do bear repeating. And I'll start with this one, that B2B decisions aren't made by individuals alone. They're influenced by entire committees. Let's continue that example of the shoe retailer, but now you're the actual warehouse that's in charge of fulfilling those orders and shipping them out. And your role within that organization is the operational director of whatever it might be in the warehouse logistics space. Ultimately, you're looking for something like new software to help the whole fulfillment process go smoother and more efficiently. And you have the ultimate inking authority on whatever software it is that your organization is going to purchase. You're the key decision maker. Conventional wisdom would say something like, we're only going to target you, sole decision maker, right? Because everybody else around you is just bloated ad spend and we don't want to waste ad dollars. However, there's a lot of data that proves this out. At executive levels, the average decision maker has at least 17 different stakeholders in their ear at any moment, giving them their recommendations, bringing them their ideas for different software solutions they might want to employ. And their buy-in really does matter. But it's just not fully attributable how that outside influence of word of mouth might influence the ultimate decision maker's purchase. You can take that even farther. Think about end users in that warehouse, right? If you implement the wrong software and all of a sudden all the end users in that warehouse are furious and not able to do their jobs efficiently, you've made a terrible mistake. Like, you would love to get their buy-in too. But good luck convincing most clients that end user campaigns are valuable. They tend to see them as just a waste, but in reality, they are absolutely influencing that decision. So broader awareness campaigns, demand generation campaigns, they do have a place in this. They just might not be fully attributable. Here's another classic. 95% of your market isn't ready to buy today. Only 5% is. If that number sounds familiar, remember we talked about how 95% of the universe is invisible? That's kind of true for our B2B universe as well, if you will. Most people are not ready to buy today, but they might be in the future. As you can imagine, might be in the future is a tough sell for a client on a marketing strategy. There's just not as much of an immediate guaranteed ROI from that. What happens is clients often want to just focus on that bottom 5% that allegedly is ready to buy today. And I get it. You get some immediate return from that. You can show some powerful performances. But what we've learned time and time again from research from the B2B Institute in conjunction with LinkedIn, for instance, you might see this temporary spike in sales and then an immediate plummet, and then another immediate spike, and then another immediate plummet. So much so that over time, that trend line at best is completely flat, or more realistically is probably starting to decline, right? That bottom funnel, that well will dry up eventually if you're not also fueling the top. So you know you have to do this. You might just not be able to fully attribute all the click activity that takes place over such a long consideration period. And that's okay. As the whole title suggests of this webinar, embrace that fact. Let's go over some more practical examples though, because our landscape, as we said earlier, is definitely evolving. And with that, a lot of traditional metrics that we've been hanging our hat on to define success for even decades in the space are starting to change on us too, if not outright disappear. Remember earlier, we talked about distant galaxies going so far away from us and so fast that they're going to disappear on us too. I think the exact same thing is happening in our little universe here of B2B with things like clicks, website page views, or even conversions. Example number one, and I'm sure you're all no doubt familiar with this in your day-to-day habits already, but AI summarized results are in fact decreasing web traffic from us. You see it in Google. You see it in their biggest rival right now, ChatGPT. When you ask a question in these engines, you're expecting robust answers all directly in platform. It's not like back in the day when I was getting started in SEO anymore, where if I typed in a question to Google, I would get thousands of different listings I would have to click on. And any one of those listings might not answer my question entirely. I might get a portion of my answer from website A and a portion of my answer from website B. And I would have to thread all that information together to get a meaningful answer. Not anymore, right? We're going to Google and getting all of that summarized succinctly in one place and cited from multiple sources simultaneously. Our challenge, though, is that we are losing web traffic as marketers because of this, right? And that's not theoretical. That is happening. Bain & Company, for instance, a reputable B2B research group, has found that on average, websites are losing upwards of 30% of their traffic because of this. I'm sure anybody in the web analytics space can relate. We've seen for years, organic search is one of the top, if not the top traffic driver of all sources. That's not becoming the case anymore. And that's where a lot of this acronym war that you might be seeing on LinkedIn, AEO, answer engine optimization, or GEO, generative engine optimization, you got LLM SEO or AI SEO, it goes nauseatingly on and on. They're all kind of suggesting the same things. I'm not going to go over tactics today on how to do that. That's not what we're here to talk about. What I do want to say, though, is this is the time to start having discussions with your clients about how they can change their goals. And that's what a lot of those topics are talking about. Basically, that these traffic drivers are becoming awareness drivers, and that's okay. Embrace that fact. The basic idea being, okay, if users don't have to click on anything anymore, clicks be damned, right? Maybe I care more about visibility and reputability for certain topics in this space than I do about the traffic that might be generated from them. Because if Google and ChatGPT and whomever else are going to summarize somebody's citations here, they better be mine, right? And not my competitors. That's what that whole topic is becoming. But it's important to have that conversation now, not 6 months or a year from now, after punishing month after punishing month of traffic declination, where it might at that point feel more like an excuse that you're making to say, oops, the landscape changed. Guess we can't do anything about that. Like, no, get ahead of that now. Get your clients to start rethinking goals about this. It will go a long way in building their trust. Here's another example. We can take consideration a step farther because AI is summarizing even that, not just our answers, but our entire process of vetting things. This is also taken from Bain & Company, and fancy that, I'm putting another funnel in your face here. But this one is about need and how we go about whittling down our options before making a purchase. Back in the olden days, all of this was human activity. Back to the shoe example, for instance, a human might have a need for a new pair of shoes. So they'll build an option set. They might visit like a dozen websites to try to compare things like price, style, promo codes. God, who wants to do promo code searching anymore, right? Not me. You might whittle that stuff down to a short list of your top 2 to 3, and then evaluate those very discerningly before you finally make a purchase from one of them. That whole column of the past was all human-based activity. And if you think about that, that's a ton of work for us to do, right? Browsing that many different websites, keeping track of all those promo codes, whatever it is. Flash forward to today or the near future, and AI agents are assisting in a lot more of that heavy duty, that work activity, that browsing activity. So much so now that I might still have a human-based need for a new pair of shoes, but I might work with a company like Stitch Fix or some other AI-driven wardrobe provider who's going to do all that browsing, all that consideration set evaluation for me. So all I have to do is okay the purchase. As a customer, fantastic, right? There's no downside to me in that. That might actually, if anything, ignite my ability to purchase more often and more quickly. But if you're a web developer and say you've convinced a client to invest $500,000 on a new website, This could, in your mind, present a bit of an existential threat, right? But I want to position that as an existential opportunity, aha, right? Because there's other ways that we can start evaluating our success on these things that don't depend necessarily on page views that are going to go away or downloads of material that are going to go away or even conversions. Heck, I mean, think about all the white paper gating strategies of the world, right? That's the way a lot of us drive leads for campaigns in the past. But if AI is going to summarize everything that might be in a white paper that you use to gate, no one's going to be submitting contact forms most likely for those kinds of things in the future. So we have to start thinking of other ways to get their attention, other ways to influence their purchasing behavior. And that's the part that I say embrace. I think that's a really exciting thing, not a scary thing. Just to give you a little taste of some of those things that excite me anyway. These days, I'm all about the zero-click experience. That's something I've been pretty passionate about and following pretty close. We talked about that with Google and AI summarized results. Social media, the same thing is definitely true. Meta and LinkedIn, they're disincentivizing referral links as a sort of almost secondary punishment to algorithmic reach all the time. They don't want to see people leaving their platforms. They want to keep them within. Or even the concept of out-of-home advertising in general. There ain't no links with that. There's no clicks there to be gathered, right? So how do we really track performance? You might not be able to. Just to quickly run through some of these examples here, the top left corner, this is a truck wrap campaign that we did for our client who was participating at a trade show, ProMat, in Chicago, Illinois last year. And we had a video playing on these trucks that drove around the convention center at peak hours. And it was a huge response. We got a lot of positive word of mouth. Word of mouth, though, not necessarily attributable to any purchase that might have been made from that, but was a really impactful thing. We knew it had an influence on people visiting that booth. LinkedIn articles, top right corner over here. If web traffic might start disappearing on us, we might need to find other avenues for posting our thoughts. Like say you're a blog writer, right? This is a great opportunity for you to reconsider where you're publishing things. As a media strategist, I'm not necessarily concerned about growing web traffic. That's not the point. The point is always get people to read the thing we wrote. And whether I publish that on LinkedIn as a LinkedIn article or on my own website as a blog, to me, it's less of a difference. What this provides you is a very friction-free opportunity for people to read what you wrote and give you direct feedback on it. This example here, we ghost wrote for one of our clients, and we got a lot of positive response, more so than we likely would have if we actually published it on their website. Kind of cool. You can go louder, you can go bigger with it if you want. Cummins, one of the clients we work with here, do types of promotions like this all the time. This is not our own as an agency. I want to be fully transparent on that. I just think that it's rad, right? They did this big 50th year anniversary celebration for doing business in China. So they illuminated this entire suspension bridge with animated light shows and stuff like that. Just really powerful, emotionally driving stuff that we know influences enthusiasm for the brand, but will never be fully attributable. And that company further, I mean, their logo, it's one of the most loyal things. People love that brand. They love that logo. You'll see it on truck decals. You'll see it on swag, hats, jerseys, stuff like that. And you'll even see it tattooed on people's body. Good luck attributing a tattoo to a purchase. You'll never be able to do it, right? All right, I think you get my point. We can keep moving here. From here, I'm going to hand it over to Chiara. We talked a lot about embracing the stuff that we can't track, the opportunities like zero click that might enable us from here. But she's going to go over the unfortunate costs of trying to force things like tracking or action to places that they don't belong.
Yes, exactly. Now we will check together some examples that I'm sure if you handle campaigns hands-on with your clients, you will find it very familiar. So let's check the first one. So if you think about placing the UTM parameters on the URLs of your clients, if we see these two examples, the first one, it's clean, neat. You can clearly see the website name and the subpage where you're going to land, right? But it doesn't contain the UTM parameter. The second one, it's more trackable, because we can attribute it through Google Analytics, through the client CRM, and we can track the online performance of the person who visited the website. However, let's be honest, which one do you think it's easier to and more trustworthy to click, especially if you have been doing any kind of cybersecurity training in the last 5 years? So we all know that people don't like to be tracked, right? So we can see a decline in clicks on these very long and trackable UTM parameters, URLs. However, of course, as Andrew said, clients love trackable results because then they have to present it in their own team internally, and they have to prove that the projects and the campaigns was successful and generated concrete results. If we go to the next example, we can see the forms, the lead gen forms. So the first one, it's less trackable because it has less information. So if you think about, I feel like all of our clients have this very detailed buyer persona profile that they usually show to us. And of course, it has to match all of the information that they want us to build on the forms so that they can show internally, yeah, we are hitting the right target here. However, as you know, we are bombarded with lead gen forms every time we open any kind of website or social media, and people don't want to give so many information and don't have the time to fill such a long form. So, of course, the first one is less trackable. However, it has a stronger brand experience because, first of all, it also has the right call to action for me. Ready to get in touch? Yes, I'm ready, so I give you my details. Or not, I'm not ready, so I'm not gonna fill this up. While the second one, it's much more trackable. It has a lot of information, and theoretically, this is what our clients want, right? And I feel like our clients always want to push the product brochures out there rather than let's try to get to know if this person who submitted the form is actually interested. Because I might download a brochure, right? But that doesn't mean I'm ready to buy. Actually, probably I'm not ready to buy. That's why I want to download a product brochure, because I want to read more about it. And yeah, but as you know, of course, clients always prefer the more trackable option in this case too. Then we have another example of creatives. So the first creative, it's quite clean, I would say. You can see the product. You can see also that it's available in different colors. Yeah, and I think it's a native in the feed of the social media. It's a native ad, really clean, and it doesn't look too much as an ad. The second one, it has a lot of call to action. It has the offers. It has what is the campaign initiative, in this case, Father's Day sales. And it invites me to view the shop. So here too, the call to action could be stronger as in the first one that says shop now. So sometimes it's difficult when we receive this type of creatives from our clients that they want us to execute. But I still believe, and this is something my clients really appreciate, that it's our responsibility as agency to always show them another point of view, educating them about the latest trend and what works and what not, and what can be a strong brand experience and what can be a weak brand experience. Then in the next slide, I'll pass it back to Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chiara. Right, so we talked a little bit about the importance of building an emotional connection with our ads, right? But how do we evaluate those kinds of things? We need new ways to evaluate success, especially if a lot of the metrics we've been hanging our hat on to define success for years are starting to disappear. I'm going to give you a few flavors of some things that you can try. I'm going to start with one for all you performance marketers out there that want to generate leads, and maybe you're having trouble with AI summarizing your white papers that you used to gate. And I'm also going to provide some examples for all you vibe marketers out there that want to know better ways to measure brand awareness and stuff like that. So starting with some good news, the dark funnel getting a little bit brighter, a little fun play on words there, eh? And what you're looking at here, if this hits you like a big old plate of spaghetti noodles, because it kind of is, but it's a more accurate reflection of what a buyer journey actually is, especially in the B2B world that could take upwards of 2 years from somebody becoming aware of a brand for the first time and then ultimately making a purchase. It's all intertwined, right? It's not a linear path like we like to think that it is sometimes. I might spend a couple of weeks browsing this website over here and these social media feeds over there. It's a lot of mixing and matching of sources. So I talked about AI summarizing things, right? Gating white papers, for instance, that's a very common tactic. I think we've all been there though and seen sort of the less exciting performance outcomes from that, where you might get a lot of really good looking leads from an activity like that, but none of them seem ready to buy, right? And as AI summarizes more of that content, people might not be submitting forms at all anymore because just like they might not need to click on something, why would they need to submit a form to basically get the same information plucked out of ChatGPT? ABM tools are offering an alternative approach to that in general by focusing less on individual action and more on intent signals in general. They'll follow a user throughout that spaghetti noodle journey and see what kind of content they're interacting with, whether that's directly on your website or within third-party websites in their network that they can track. They'll build a profile about that user that basically says, okay, this person, they work at the company exactly you want to target, and they're demonstrating a lot of intent around the topics that you're directly selling. Forget about whether or not they submit a form. Now's the time to consider outbound with your sales team. And that's informing them not just when to reach out, when they might be a little bit more buyer ready, but also how. It's giving them a blueprint, if you will, to personalize their outreach approach. It's pretty cool, right? It kind of flips the whole idea of lead generation on its head that maybe form submission doesn't matter. After all, we get a lot of not buyer ready leads from traditional gating content strategies. Maybe monitoring their intent and reaching out at the right time in the right way is the better alternative. If you are a brand marketer and you want to prove that you have awareness growing in your market, there are a couple of proxies to help you do that. This first one is looking at branded searches over time. This is an anonymized chart from one of the clients that we work with on a global brand initiative. And it basically tracks over time how many people are Googling their brand in their key markets where they want to do business. The idea is pretty simple. If more people are Googling you today than they did in the past, presumably more people are aware of your brand, because otherwise, why would they do that? And we get that data directly from Google. They'll tell you how many times per month, per quarter, whatever it is, people are Googling your brand. It's called search volume. And search volume is a very difficult, if not damn near impossible metric to inflate. In the way like things, impressions, ad clicks, we all know how easy it is to inflate those things. That's not to say that those metrics, if they are legitimately earned, can't help tell that story too. They absolutely can. You just might need something else that's a little more ironclad to sell up to leadership. And you can see this annotated over time when key initiatives took place. Just to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version here, Q2 2023, a new website goes live for our brand. We kicked off a global relaunch for it in Q4 2023, and we could see even more spikes happening in their key markets over time. Throughout 2024, we had specific geographic campaign focuses combined with an always-on awareness campaign that was just drumming in the background. So much so now that our combined efforts are helping us achieve record-breaking searches. More people are Googling this brand today than literally ever did before in the markets that matter the most to the client. Pretty cool. You can take that a step farther as well and benchmark that against competitors. That's what they call share of search. So stacking up all the branded searches, not just from our brand, but also competitor number 1, competitor number 2, 3, etc., on and on, whatever you want to construct it to be. And in this case, looking at one time period in 2024, our brand was around 17% share of search. Flash forward to 1 year later, same time period, it jumped to a little over 20%. So 3-ish plus percentage points gained there. And that might not feel like a ton, but that really does have some pretty significant implications. Take this with a grain of salt. I wouldn't bank all my faith that this is entirely accurate because there's a lot of things that can influence nuances here. But the research generally indicates in the concept of share of search that for every 1 percentage point gained there, you might have earned upwards of 0.5 percentage point of true market share. So this whole concept, it's a good proxy not just for measuring your brand awareness growing over time, but how much market share you might potentially own. It's a very easy thing for leadership teams to look at and say from a high level, yes, I think our branding efforts, our marketing efforts are working, and it's making an impact in a way that matters to me. Now, both of those proxies search volume and share of search, they're only volumetric in nature. In other words, they're just showing you how much of something is happening. They're not really showing you how people feel about your brand, though. Now, I got one more hypothetical example here. Say, I don't know, you're the CEO of some imaginary tech company who got caught misbehaving on the Jumbotron of a Coldplay concert, right? If you have been misbehaving and got caught on said Jumbotron, no doubt searches are exploding about your company right now all over the web. It's not necessarily a good awareness, though, right? I am not personally a subscriber of the old adage that all publicity is good publicity. In fact, if you are the stockholder of said imaginary company, you're no doubt furious right now because you're probably seeing all sorts of tanking value in that. Enter sentiment analysis. It shows you not just how people know your brand, but how they feel about it. And there are a lot of good tools in the market that are basically offering the same kinds of technology. You got Brandwatch, Brand24, Hootsuite has a product called Talkwalker, there's Meltwater. They all do similar things. They're scraping the internet from social media references to trade publication citations, news articles, YouTube videos, et cetera, et cetera. It's scraping all that and looking for citations and discussions about your brand and synthesizing that information to tell you, by and large, are those conversations positive, neutral, or negative? They'll also provide you some really wonderful anecdotal things to consider, like what common questions are people asking about your brand? What are common challenges or frustrations? Maybe you can learn from these tools that you're having a pricing problem in the marketplace or product reliability issues. This can be really useful stuff. Of course, I don't want to just think cynically. Let's say you're seeing a lot of positive stuff out there, like your Cummins, and people are just saying, man, I love this brand. I would never have my truck powered by anything else. That's great information, especially if it correlates around the timing of key campaigns you're driving. So pair the power of brand awareness volume with search volume data and share of search with sentiment analysis. And now you're starting to paint a very clear profile to leadership that your branding efforts are in fact working. There are a few others you can consider as well, and I'll just quickly rip through these. There's share of voice, and that's looking at, on average, how many times your brand is cited in news articles and trade publications compared to your competitors. It's a good PR metric. There's voice of customers. That's just interviewing your customer base and your distributor base to hear from them, ear to the street, how they think about your brand, your products, their reliability, et cetera. And lastly here is share of model. We talked earlier about AI summary and how important it is to build reputability there. Truthfully, I don't think there's any consensus yet of the best way to do that. That field is coming together rapidly quick, and that's what share of model is talking about. Is there any way that we can measure accurately how often our brand is being cited in an LLM compared to our competitors for a given series of topics? There are tools emerging on that, though. Google Search Console is going to start rolling out organic impression data on how often your website is summarized in an AI summary compared to traditional results. You've got Ahrefs and SEMrush trying to offer similar things. HubSpot is getting on that game. So perhaps if we meet, say, 6 months or so from now, the market will find consensus on how we measure that. But again, I would recommend having that proactive conversation with your client today, not after the fact. Start trying to introduce some of these new proxies and measurements now and work with them to redefine their goals a little bit. So just to start summarizing and concluding here before we move into more open discussion and questions, some things just aren't trackable. That's okay. Doesn't mean they're not impactful. We are amidst this shifting digital landscape, and users are increasingly relying on AI to do their heavy lifting, their browsing habits, their clicking habits. And what that means is a future is coming, if it's not already here, that's going to drastically reduce or completely eliminate many of the KPIs we as digital marketers have been using for success metrics for decades. Things like web traffic, page views, conversions. We might expect those rightly to disappear. Fortunately, there are some alternative things you can look for measurement. On the performance side, say AI is eating up all your white paper downloads that you used to bank on for lead generation. Maybe ABM and intent-based marketing signals is the way to go. If you're a vibe marketer and you're trying to build brand awareness or brand loyalty, look to things like share of search or sentiment analysis that can help bridge some of those gaps where measurement maybe is lacking in terms of attribution for other performance type campaigns. Regardless of what path you take, what kind of gaps you need to fill, now is the time to start talking to your clients about how to evaluate that success. I think amidst all that, there is this really exciting opportunity to me. Maybe you do want to go do your drone show thing after all, like I do, right? Maybe you'll never be able to fully attribute those clicks to any purchase, but we know there's a lot of ways that we can prove that they're making an impact. That's what I mean when I say embracing the dark funnel. Embrace the unknown. Go try something that maybe no one's ever thought to do before. It is worth the investment. All right. That being said, I would happily open the conversation to any questions or comments anybody might have.
Yeah, I guess you can write it in the chat and then we can reply.
All right. Anybody? Okay, here we go. Cliff. Hyperslick presentation. Thank you, Cliff.
Ah, Cliff. Hey.
Good to hear from you again. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, Caitlin. All right. Well, if there's no questions, we can wrap up there. Feel free to hit us up, though. We got our contact information here. And again, thank you so much for participating and for joining us today. It meant a lot. Hope you dug it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.